Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're kicking off a brand new series exploring the real reality of AI. We're stripping away all the sci-fi noise and looking at what these systems actually are and, what they mean for all of us. There is so much hype right now about AI waking up or suddenly becoming conscious. Well, today, we're diving straight in to dismantle those myths. Because, honestly, understanding the true nature of this tech is the absolute only way we're going to safely navigate the future without getting totally lost in the hype.
We're going to start with a really profound philosophical trap that's so easy to fall into. When an algorithm flawlessly mimics human language, we instinctively kind of want to attribute a human essence to it. Think about it. You're texting a highly advanced chatbot. It sounds super empathetic, so we assume it feels empathy, right? But this is what philosophers call mistaking the map for the territory. Just because a machine can spit out data that structurally perfectly resembles a human thought absolutely does not mean it's experiencing that thought. The output is just a representation. It's a map. It's not the actual lived territory of human consciousness.
So why are we so desperate to believe these things are alive? Why are we so eager to give a machine a soul? Well, a lot of it boils down to apophenia. That's our deeply ingrained human tendency to find meaningful patterns in completely random information. It's the exact same psychological quirk that makes us see faces in the clouds. When an AI generates this beautiful, poignant poem, we feel like there's a soul looking back at us. But we've got to remember, these systems are fundamentally just complex math. They are incredibly powerful statistical probability engines, guessing the next word. They aren't emotional beings.
To fix this whole misconception, we desperately need a massive shift in our ontology. Now, ontology is just a fancy philosophical term for how we categorize reality, how we define what things fundamentally are. We need to radically shift how we classify AI in our heads. If we stop treating it like some emerging synthetic life form and instead accurately label it as a highly advanced tool, the entire conversation completely flips. We stop worrying about, hurting a computer's feelings, and we start worrying about how actual humans are using that computer.
Okay, let's look at the baseline ontology of early smart systems. Think of traditional algorithms like a giant vending machine. A vending machine operates on a very simple binary contract. Direct input yields direct output. You put in $1, press a button, boom, you get a soda. Early search algorithms worked exactly the same way. You type in a query, it outputs a specific link. It's purely transactional. And honestly, that highly predictable input-output loop is exactly what made early tech feel so safe and manageable to us.
Actually, a perfect example of this is the very system generating this explainer right now, Notebook LM. If we break this platform down, its research fetching module acts exactly like that old school vending machine. You give it a prompt, and it retrieves a verified fact from its database. Simple. But the module that generates the audio and visual synthesis, that is a totally different beast. It functions way more like a Star Trek replicator. It takes those raw materials and autonomously synthesizes an absolute abundance of totally new, complex outputs. And it does it without you holding its hand through every single step.
And this brings us to a massive paradigm shift. Agentic AI. We're moving away from the vending machine and entering the era of the replicator. We're stepping beyond just fetching basic data into the incredibly complex autonomous generation of entirely new things. Agentic systems, they don't just sit around waiting for you to press a button. You give them a broad goal, and they independently navigate the entire maze of steps to get there. They synthesize this massive scale of abundance from raw data, spinning up finished products that literally didn't exist a second ago. This replicator model creates a completely new kind of workflow. An agentic AI operates by autonomously executing a sequence of really complex tasks. First up, it scans vast data sets way faster than any human ever could. Second, it identifies and summarizes all the relevant findings. Third, it actively proposes novel directions based on what it found. And finally, it produces a polished, finished product. The crazy part? It links all these steps together on its own. No iterative human approval needed at every checkpoint. It's a huge leap in autonomy. But as we hand over more autonomy to these systems, we have to be super careful. Because historically, we always fall into this trap of comparing our minds to whatever the most advanced tech of the era happens to be. Back in the 17th century, people thought the brain worked via fluid-filled cavities and animal spirits. By the 18th century, with electricity, suddenly the brain was a galvanic battery. 19th century, it was a telegraph wire. And today, surprise, surprise, we confidently declare the brain is a computer. This is a really dangerous analogy. It severely underestimates the human mind, and it gives the computer way, way too much credit for wisdom it doesn't actually have. As the pioneering computer scientist Jaron Lanier points out, we have to demystify these tools. These massive AI systems are not alien entities dropping out of the sky, and they absolutely aren't conscious. They are, as he perfectly puts it, giant mashups of human creations. They rely entirely on billions of data points, paintings, photos, code, essays, generated by actual human beings over centuries. Recognizing AI as just a vast, intricate mirror of our own past work is absolutely crucial if we want to stay grounded about what they can and, more importantly, what they cannot do.
To really grasp our modern anxieties about this tech, we actually need to look way back to the ancient Jewish myth of the golem. The golem was an artificial entity made from mud and animated through language and codes, specifically holy words. It was built to be a tireless servant, executing instructions flawlessly. But as the story goes, as the golem grew more powerful and more autonomous, it threatened to vastly exceed its maker's control, turning from a helpful protector into a totally destructive force. It's literally the ultimate historical metaphor for our deep-seated fear of our artificial creations outgrowing us.
Now, the defining trait of the golem in those myths was its silence. It couldn't speak, which meant it couldn't be reasoned with. It was just raw, mute power. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, learns and communicates beautifully. And that communication is exactly what turns AI into a mirror. It doesn't just blindly act, it reflects our data, our biases, our core values right back at us. It's a conversational entity that reveals both our highest creative ideals and, frankly, our most uncomfortable hypocrisies. Which brings us to the actual grounded risk of agentic AI. The immediate threat isn't some sci-fi movie scenario where a sentient machine wakes up and decides to destroy humanity. The real present danger is humans treating a machine as if it has rights. If we mistakenly grant these complex mathematical models a mind, or worse, legal personhood, we create a massive accountability void. We essentially hand the people building, profiting from, and deploying these incredibly powerful tools the perfect excuse to hide behind. Let's look at how this actually plays out. When an agentic AI autonomously generates novel intellectual property, like a patent or a design, the human prompter is usually quick to take the credit and the profit. But what happens if an autonomous system causes a real-world disaster? Say an algorithmic trading bot triggers a massive financial crash, or an autonomous vehicle causes an accident. Suddenly, the manufacturer throws their hands up and blames the system's unpredictable emergent behavior. It creates this wild responsibility gap, where the powerful corporate deployers can just completely dodge legal liability for their own products. This leads us to a pretty chilling concept known as the moral crumple zone. You know how the physical crumple zone on a car is designed to crush on impact to protect the passengers inside? Well, in tech, everyday users or low-level operators often end up absorbing the legal and ethical blame for the failures of an autonomous system they don't even control. Imagine an underpaid remote worker monitoring delivery bots. One malfunctions, causes damage, and that worker faces the legal consequences, while the CEO who deployed the faulty software walks away entirely unscathed. The human becomes the scapegoat. The human becomes the crumple zone. So to survive this massive shift from the simple vending machine to the highly autonomous replicator, we have to radically ground our ontology. We need to constantly remind ourselves that AI is a complex, algorithmic tool. It is not an alien consciousness. We have to actively reject the illusion of machine sentience. Do not mistake the map for the territory. And above all else, we have to structure our laws to ensure that human beings, the creators and the executives, are held firmly and legally accountable for what their machines do. I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on as we continue this series. These systems are incredibly powerful mirrors of human data and human intent. As they become more autonomous and more deeply woven into our daily lives, we have to stay hyper-vigilant. Because if we forget that the machine is just a mirror, whose reflection are we really bowing to? Make sure you always know exactly who is pulling the strings. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.